John Hart, welcome back to Australian Musician.
Thanks for having me.
You're about to embark on the Harlequin Dream 10th anniversary tour, New Zealand and Australia. How is that working? Are you playing the entire album track by track?
Yeah, we're gonna do the front to back vibe, which is always a challenge. We've done it once before, and we not with Harlequin Dream, but we did it with Moonfire, and we've never played the songs in order before, nor have we necessarily played all the songs live. Sometimes certain tracks on a record you play and record them, and then you never play them again because they never quite creep into the set list. So there's definitely a couple off Harlequin Dream that are that way too. So there's been a few people spending time in the woodshed at home, so to speak, trying to figure out how those songs go again. And then there's something magical about playing an album through in its order. So I'm looking forward to it, but it's not something we normally do.
Yeah. So you have to go back and find some sounds in your keyboards that you hadn't used for a while?
Absolutely. And sometimes you make sounds in the studio that you don't have any longer. There was something in the studio and you used it, and you kind of remember, like I remember a particular sound in a song called Bridges, and then in a song called Harlequin Dream, another sound. And I'm like, there's no real way for me to make that actual sound on stage. So you kind of listen and you go, oh, it sounds a bit like this. And you try and sort of manufacture something after the fact, so to speak, that kind of at least communicates the idea. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure there's not too many people taking sonic notes in the crowd
I don't
anymore.
think there are. No, no. And look, I went and saw Wilco recently, and they, whilst being somewhat true to the record, they also interpret the record in a way which I think makes it feel kind of alive. So we're not going to go and do bizarre versions of songs, but I think you can sort of take some creative license with your own material as well. And I enjoyed when they did it.
Yeah. You released an EP of outtakes, I suppose, last year, tracks like Abraham and Mexico. Are they going to be included in this tour?
I don't think we weren't planning on it at this stage because we were sort of like, let's just play the album front to back and then let's give some other stuff off other records. But we haven't actually made that decision. So it's still up for grabs, I think, because we've never played those. So that would be interesting. I mean, I'd like to do it, but it's a democracy within our band.
Yes.
So votes will be cast when we get into the rehearsal studio. But I think that'd be a bit of fun to put one of those on at the end.
Yeah. Sarah Blasko is going on tour with you. How far back do the band and Sarah go?
So our bass player Symes, he goes a long way back with her. He played in her band historically, before he was in our band. And then I've known her since I reckon 2012, but I loved her music beforehand. So um like I go back with her in my own sort of music listening for a long time, but then I've known her for a bit over 10 years. She's amazing. She's like, it's sort of ridiculous that she's playing before us.
Yeah. Um, you're playing a couple of nights at the Forum here in Melbourne, a venue that's become a bit of a home for you in Melbourne, I guess. Do you like to play venues that you're familiar with?
I think that's definitely a vibe, particularly if I can be if I can say it, ones that you love that you play again are great. There's some venues that we don't love that we've played again, but the forum. I think the thing about the forum is it's gotten better over the years. It feels like a little bit more has been put into it. So I think the first time we played the forum was probably 2011 or 12. Maybe it was 2012. And then since then, it's just been gradually made nicer and nicer and nicer. And it was already nice at the start. So I think it's probably like, I mean, you've got the Palais in Melbourne as well. But of that kind of thing, between those two venues, you've got two of the most spectacular venues in Australia.
Yeah. But does the band have any pre-gig rituals?
Maybe ritual's a strong way of putting it. I think we have a loose routine. So I think more or less half an hour before the show, we like to have the dressing room basically empty, and then we'll probably have an acoustic guitar and then just sing through some of the different songs so that people can sort of warm up their voices and just hear the sound of some harmonies together. Um, but it's nothing really beyond that. I think probably we have more or less like patterns on a show day that you kind of try and get a relatively healthy lunch. And then a few people have sleep in the afternoon, and then a few people have a go to the gym or something like that. But then it's basically like you do a sound check, you have something to eat for dinner, and then you basically that half an hour beforehand, people have got their gig clothes on, and we're doing a bit of a warm up. That's how we do it.
Yeah. What about your stage rig for this tour? I think at Chris Isaac you had a Kurzweil synth and a Novation MIDI keyboard setup.
Yeah, the Novation's actually a synth itself. So that's called the Novation Summit. So it's a really cool sort of digital analog hybrid. It's got analog, everything apart from the oscillators is analog on that. So it sounds really cool. I like it, and it lets me make two sounds at once, which is really important because a lot of our songs there's sort of a lot of little intricate parts, and then the Kurzweil is like sort of a workstation, so it makes my like piano sounds, and it makes my organ and Wurlitzer, and I've got some samples on there as well, some like nice Mellotron samples, and then occasionally I have to like trigger a sound. Like I think I trigger a sound that I made on a synthesizer, but it was too hard to kind of make that sound and play it. Like I just put it onto a single key on the workstation, and there's this laser sound in a song we've got called State of Flight that I just took it off the record, the sample, and put it onto a key. So it's nice being able to do that to kind of just give sometimes a little flavor bit, and then I like to, as much as possible, just play all the parts.
Yeah. It's probably a trivial thing, but sometimes when I look at a band performing, I sometimes think about where the members are seated or standing on stage. Um, like your keys are at the back on the left or stage right in theatre speak.
Yeah,
Uh, and then you've got Dave Symes to your left, and um, Killian's at the front, Dave's at the front. Did
yeah.
was it always like that? Was there much of a discussion about who would stand where?
So the answer is yes, it was always like that. And the answer is yes, there was always also a lot of discussion. So I don't think it's a trivial thing at all. I think it's like a highly significant thing where people are on stage. So for us, I think I mean, the light-hearted, jokey version of it is Tim always has wanted to be a front man, so the drums needed to be at the front as well. The more kind of the reason for us that makes sense is because Tim and Dave sing a lot of harmonies together. Like we all sing a bit, but there's something about the way Tim and Dave sing harmonies together. And usually, if you hear a single voice with Dave, it's always Tim, and so he sort of felt that those sight lines and that ability to be able to kind of see each other in the peripheral was really important to those harmony moments. And I think he's right because it's something I think that sets us apart from a lot of other bands live is that ability to kind of execute those harmonies. And then I think there's a nice energy to it. It's different. I don't mind being at the back. I've occasionally been at the front because if you're playing a support tour for somebody, sometimes you can't have your stuff where you want to, and it's quite what's the word? I was going to say discombobulating, but that's a bit strong. But it's a little disorienting when you change your position because you're used to hearing things from a certain position, so you become very attuned to the physicality of it. And then you play. Like bass always likes to be near the drums in general. So Killian's the person who's probably the least happy. I think Killian would like to be closer to the drums. So he's kind of lost out, if you will. He's the one who I don't mind being where I am. I think he's like, oh, he always wants a bit more drums in his sort of in ears or in his monitors if he's using them. But I think that's the thing. Like we're kind of a hybrid setup between in ears and stage monitors. Again, this is nerdy stuff, so stop me if you don't want to do that. But yeah, that's helped me because it means you can kind of control things so they aren't too loud. But at the same time, because you've got a stereo sound, you've got a left and a right. I can put something that's on my left on the left hand side and something that's on the right hand side, and everything sort of feels spatially correct as well.
Yeah. Your brother Tim released a solo album quite a few years ago. Any thoughts of doing one yourself?
I haven't like I can't sing as well as him, or write melodies as well as he can. He's certainly got the folk troubadour thing, but I've been working on some other stuff, but nothing that's necessarily going to go see the light of day. It might. It's like when we're in a bit of downtime, I keep writing, and then sometimes those songs end up being band songs anyway. Or it seems that the rhythm of it works when we kind of do that. I'm thinking, oh, I've got some songs together here, and then we sort of get back busy again, and so that kind of goes to the side. So we'll see. You know, I'll never say never, but I certainly don't have any plans right now.
Yeah. Last time I spoke to the two Daves, they said that you write a lot of sad ballads.
Yeah, that seems to be my specialty. So I think I write sad ballads, and then what happens is somebody comes up with a loop or a drum part or a groove that makes that sad ballad feel less sad. And so that those things kind of work together, and that pulls me out of that kind of world. I think I just sit at home, like it's partially I mean, to me, it's similar to the where you are on stage thing. The time of day you do things, I think, also makes a difference. Like when you're writing ideas, I think what I would do oftentimes is just like at night time, just hit record and just have like either a synthesizer going or have a piano going and just play around. And then because it's night and it's kind of still, it lends itself to a certain thing. You're not necessarily feeling that like a big energy. But then if I do things in the day, maybe it's different. So yeah, I'm a bit of a nighttime guy for that. I like to just kind of sit down at the piano when it's all quiet and put the soft pedal on and just play around. And so maybe I'm my own worst enemy. I don't know.
Do you still find time to be a music fan and listen to music for your own enjoyment? And if so, what have you been listening to?
Yeah, I do. I definitely do. There's times when I have to remind myself, oh, hang on, you haven't listened to anything for pleasure for a while. But that's only rare. Like I think I was reading an article with some an electronic musician who I don't know his stuff, but he has a label that put out that Brian Eno and Fred Again thing, and so I was reading about him, and he said it takes time to listen to an album every day, and it kind of kicked me into gear again. So I've been doing that. If nothing else, I put on an album when I'm doing the washing up at night, so that's kind of a nice moment. So I actually have been listening to that Brian Eno Fred Again album. I forget the title of it. Maybe it's called Secret Life. That's really cool. I love Eno. Eno did amazing production sort of in the 80s and 90s, did some incredible ambient solo records. And this record with Fred Again, I think is pretty special. There's another guy, I'm just going to flick, so you might lose my camera for a sec. There's another guy who we've been looking around for a producer for a new album. And when you're looking through names of things, you kind of listen to somebody's catalog, and sometimes you stumble on something. And there's a guy called Tyson Motzenbocker, I think. Yeah, that's what it is. He comes out of, I think, California, and he did a great record a few years ago that I've been listening to a lot, and that's called, where are we? Whoa. I'm trying to navigate multiple things. It's called Someday I'll Make It All Up to You, and I
Okay.
think that's really cool. Um, I've been digging that. What else have I listened to? I still really like that Phoebe Bridgers Punisher record. And then I listened to the Boy Genius thing. I probably wasn't as into that, but I still liked it quite a lot. And then I've been listening to some old Andy Schauf. Um, Maybe his like first or second record. I think it's called The Party, or at least the party's in the record. That's really cool. And then what else is there? There's something else I've been really enjoying. I'm going to my Apple Music to just so I can give you the real, not the curated. Um, no, can't find it. Oh, I've been listening to Tame Impala's big album again. I think it's called Currents, because I just feel like the sounds on that and the way he defines every little musical section, they all kind of feel really special and unique. And there's always just something that when you listen, like you just enjoy the songs, but then when you listen carefully, you're like, oh wow, that's really clever. He just did that or whatever. And so I think, yeah, something about that record, because I like to pride myself on being a late adopter. I come to the party late. I'm not a trendsetter in any way. So Killian and Dave Hosking were massive Tame Impala fans when Tame Impala was really cool. And when it was just like underground, not underground, they were never really underground, but like that kind of really psychedelic, sort of a bit Cream meets John Lennon sort of sounding. And I just was like, I don't really get it. I feel like I've heard it before, but I'm acknowledging that's ridiculous, like because it's always been really high quality. But then when he did the pop album, I think it's Currents, it's the one that's got the sort of silver ball on the front. I was just like, oh, I really get it, and I loved it, and I was like, I became the evangelist for the album in the band, and everyone else was just a bit like, oh yeah, like yeah, like he sort of finally caught up. But I think that album's a pop masterpiece, and pop in the best sense of the word. So I've been going back to that because whenever we're sort of demoing and recording, you're always listening to your own music. And I think when you're really focused on what you're doing, that's great because you got to push it as far as you can. But then it does help to have references of things that have stood the test of time. And in terms of like recent albums, that's definitely an album that stood the test of time. So it's nice to listen to something you've done and then put that on, because you don't really want to have that feeling that, oh, ours sounds really like kind of terrible after that. So I wouldn't say it's as direct as being like using it as a reference, but it's getting close to that for me. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you guys played Europe and UK earlier this year.
Yeah, we did. We did.
How did that go?
Yeah, it was amazing. One of the best tours we've ever had there. I don't quite know what changed. Like we've been going there for a while, and the UK had always like UK's been always good for us in London, but it's always been a bit hard work getting it happening outside of London. It's always been worth going, but never like. But this time it was like just the whole of the UK leg sold out. The Netherlands is like per capita is nearly as big as Australia is for us, and it's just a really great vibe there. And they really look after artists. Like the catering's amazing at the venues, and yeah, it was a great tour. It was really really like um you know loved it. And the European audience it's a different, particularly Europe as opposed to the UK. The UK is great. Like the Brighton show was like one of the best shows we've ever had, and it wasn't like it was sold out, but it wasn't a massive room or anything. I think it was 400 people there, but it was incredible. But the European sensibility of like an appreciation is really really nice. You get used to the very like rapturous sort of applause and then quiet and sort of thing. And it's like not it's different to Australia, but it's nice.
Yeah. Um, so the Harlequin Dream Tour starts in May and just in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Once that's done, what's on for the rest of the year?
So it's Harlequin Dream. Then we'll probably be in the writing room a little bit more. We're looking to record again this year. And then we've just announced, I think we just announced it probably this morning, we've got some American dates coming up. So we go to America, or North America, because it's sort of half Canada, half US. We head over at the end of August. So Harlequin Dream sort of carries through May, some in June, and then I think we do even some because we couldn't get a venue. I think we actually finished some of it like in August, and then we head to America. And then hopefully after that it'll be studio.
Okay. All right, John, it's been great to catch up again, and we'll catch you next time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Greg. Much appreciated.